Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel where we talk about and play video games, and today I'm going to be reading and responding to some of the comments and the thoughts from my top 5 things I dislike or hate about Old School RuneScape. But before we jump in, I am currently at Wintertodt for my Race to 99 series, so that's what you're going to be seeing in the background. Old School is at Wintertodt trying to get 99 fire making, so that's what you're going to be seeing in the background. Alright, first let's cover 2 major issues with my video, and these are issues that I am agreeing with. They're things that people have brought up that I think kind of take away from the video, and if I could go back, I would definitely do them differently. Number 1, it was very aggressive and condescending. It wasn't meant to be. Aggressive, maybe, but the aggression wasn't meant to be targeted at fans of Old School RuneScape or people who disagree with me. The video originally was top 5 reasons I'm never playing Old School RuneScape again, and that wasn't going to be clickbait. At the time, I was like, you know what, last time I played Old School, I was just so bored and so frustrated. I don't think I'm ever going to play again. Well, I hopped on Old School RuneScape to get some footage, and I found myself having a lot of fun and remembering that I really do like Old School RuneScape. Beyond like, I love Old School RuneScape. So I was like, okay, clearly I can't make this video about how I'm never gonna play again, because I do love it and I do want to keep playing it. So it evolved into just the top 5 things I hate. But from people who didn't know that, this version still felt very negative. And then there was this element, right? I made this little character that was like a dorky version of Old School RuneScape, and the intention was to present those arguments that I've heard in a funny way. But what ended up happening was some of my frustration with Old School RuneScape and some of my frustration with the fans of Old School RuneScape. I feel like a crazy person because sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who doesn't like these things. And there have been many people who have told me, like, you just don't get the game, just stop playing. And I don't want to stop playing because I love the game. But then I get this frustration that I'm like, am I the only one who doesn't like this? All that to say, that's why that kind of started to come out like that. Now, I shouldn't have made a video like that. So for that, I want to say that I'm sorry if you felt like I was condescending to you or had this air of superiority or that I felt like I was smarter than you. I'm sorry about that because that was not my intention, but it is how a lot of it came across. Now I will say I still at this point stand by my points, but I could have presented it in a more calm and level-headed way that didn't attack people who disagreed with me. The second major thing I wanted to address is my lack of knowledge in RuneScape. I will admit, I don't have a lot of late game knowledge because just the way I play RuneScape in my personal time is very chill, but to say I don't know anything is just not true because I've been playing this game since 2005, so I'm not an expert, and there's a lot of this game, both games, that are considered staples of the game that I just really haven't dipped my toes into for one reason or another. But, you know, there's a decent point that's being brought up in the comments that if I'm going to voice my opinion, then I probably should know more about the game. Now, I don't think knowing late game stuff disqualifies me from talking about my personal issues with the game. That being said, I do want to do something about this, and a lot of people seem to think that my opinions will change if I get more experience in Old School RuneScape. I don't think so, but it's definitely possible. So, as a way of either proving this argument right or wrong, I have a plan. There are 2 ways that I'm going to be doing this. One is a RuneScape 3 blind bossing series that I'm working on with my friend, new guy in my Discord. Basically, I'm going to fight every boss blind, so I have to go into every boss without knowing their mechanics, without knowing how they work or specific items that I need. Old School RuneScape, the goal is to obtain a fire cape as an Iron Man. Now, for some of you that might seem like a really low goal, but I do know that you have to progress your account pretty far to be able to successfully defeat Jad. And in the interest of trying to educate myself in Old School RuneScape, if you guys have any other goals I should set for myself before or after the fire cape, please let me know in the comments. Okay, speaking of comments, we're gonna get into some of these other comments, and like I said, my opinions might change as I learn more about the game, but for now, my opinions are the same. Let's see what people had to say. Let's jump into these comments. Okay, yeah, let's just ignore the fact that there's 54 teleportation spells, 44 jewelry teleports, 13 teleportation portals, 3 teleportation levers, 13 spirit trees, 52 fairy ring teleports, 6 obelisk teleports, 7 spawn locations, which you can teleport to with a ring, 17 free minigame teleports, and 16 permanent NPC teleports. Let's also just ignore that energy, super energy, and stamina potions exist. Let's also pretend Full Graceful doesn't exist. I'm an avid enjoyer of both video games, and I can confidently say that both games have big problems. And okay, then they go into their problems with RuneScape 3 and Old School RuneScape. As for the first part of this comment, I mentioned this in the video almost word for word about all these different things, but I just disagree with that fixing the issue. If the base movement system is broken, making me fix it is not something I'm interested in. So let me be clear, because this seems to be a point of contention, right? I have unlocked teleports. I've used minigame teleports. I've used the Lever in Edgeville jewelry teleport, ton of that. I can't say I've used all of the teleports, but I've used a lot of them, right? It's not hard to get those things. And that's not my point. My point is not, oh, it's way too hard to get these things and they shouldn't make me do it. That's not what I was saying at all. I was just saying that it shouldn't be my job as the player to fix or overcome broken game mechanics. And yes, overcoming challenging game mechanics with higher levels or new items is rewarding, but this isn't a challenging game mechanic. It's a broken game mechanic. Dude is playing a no teleport locked account. I just thought this was funny. It made me laugh. I know they're criticizing me, but it did make me laugh. And like I said, I do teleport, and I've achieved those things. That wasn't my point. I've done that, but I just think the movement system is crazy. If you're a vegetarian eating at a restaurant and purposefully order a regular burger instead of a vegetarian one, you can't get mad that the burger isn't vegetarian. You got exactly what you ordered. You just don't like it. There's 2 burgers on the menu for a reason. And I responded to this, and I said, this metaphor doesn't work because the point of Old School RuneScape is not to walk around or have a fixed UI. Walking was never a core aspect of why RuneScape was good. That's why they changed it in RS3, and that's why they're about to change it in Old School RuneScape. And there's another thing, I'll talk about it a little bit more, but I didn't know that they were already working on changing it, on changing the walking system, and that's great. The fact that they're changing it is awesome. A lot of people voiced sentiments like this, the idea of like, this is what RuneScape is, so if you don't like it, stop playing. I just disagree that the walking mechanic is a core aspect of what makes Old School RuneScape what it is. And I think this goes back to challenging versus tedious, right? Old School RuneScape is meant to be challenging, and it is, but the walking mechanic moves from challenging to just broken, in my opinion. And like I said, one element of my frustration that kind of poisoned this video is the idea that every element from 07 is vital to Old School RuneScape's identity. The idea that this was in the game in 2007 when this was backed up, so it has to stay because it is vital to the DNA of Old School RuneScape. Just because it was in the game in 07 doesn't mean that it is what makes this game what it is. And I just disagree that it's a core element of the game. I appreciate the video, but one part caught me off guard about outdated game design. It's called Old School RuneScape. This game is for the players who want these kind of mechanics. That's literally why they're split in 2, LOL. So this is again kind of like this idea of like, this is what the game is about. But my point wasn't that this game mechanic is out of date today, though it definitely is, but that it was outdated even in 2005. I started playing in 2005, and even back then I was like, yikes, this is rough. I loved everything else about the game, and that's what kept me hooked. But the walking mechanic, I was like, woof, I don't like this at all. And I think honestly it was a relic from RuneScape Classic that just didn't make sense as the size of the map kept expanding. In my mind, the point of Old School RuneScape is not to perpetuate outdated game design, but to perpetuate the spirit of the game back in the early 2000s. To me, the title Old School means that we are keeping the spirit of RuneScape 07. Not that we're literally keeping every game mechanic the same as it was in 2007. There's a difference to me in like keeping the spirit of the game and keeping it locked in a time capsule. Like, you can't change the walking mechanic because this is how it was in 07, and that's why we're here. To me, the walking mechanic has always been a weakness of the game and is definitely not core to what makes RuneScape so special. There are definitely challenging aspects of Old School, like soloing Wintertodt had me LOLing. Yeah, apparently this is a result of my lack experience with bossing in Old School RuneScape. Soloing Wintertodt is a challenge for me, but I'm discovering through these comments that it's not for most people, apparently. So there you go. That is definitely my lack of experience shining through 100%, I will admit to that. Here's the problem with modern gamers at 820, where I talk about how I shouldn't be required to compensate for outdated game design. Why shouldn't you be required to do that? Let's put the outdated game design to the side and maybe consider it a sign of progression. You do the levels, the tasks, and even the quests to progress yourself and almost feel like you've earned an achievement for getting that item, that be it teleporting or getting graceful. In RS3, you're handheld, babied, and everything has become a convenience. Plus, as a personal preference, I dislike how AFK majority of skills are for RuneScape 3. So I will give you this. RuneScape 3 is definitely too handholdy. I will 100% give you that, because it's true. The tutorial is far too long at the beginning, and it constantly tries to help you find your next task, and point-and-click adventures drop you in a location and say, explore and figure it out. Holding the player's hand too much loses some of that RuneScape magic. Just give me that basic tutorial, that old school tutorial where it tells you the basic mechanics of the game, drop me in the world, done. Now, as far as the other element of his comment of the reason that the walking mechanic is the way it is to make you feel like you're progressing. I don't think that making that better would take away that feeling. And I think people are arguing, well, yeah, it sucks because they want you to level up. Okay, but it sucks too much because it's broken. If Old School RuneScape made their movement system just like RuneScape 3, and I'm not talking about the Lodestone network, we're putting that aside, I'm just talking about their movement system. So if Old School RuneScape made their movement system just like RuneScape 3, unlocking teleports and using faster methods to get around would still feel like an achievement because your run energy would still run out and it would still take you longer to get around. So it would just make that process inconvenient rather than torture. Let's take the rest mechanic, for example, in RuneScape 3. When you rest, your character sits down and your run energy replenishes much faster. This stops you like dead in your tracks for a few seconds. Your character fully sits down. So you're not running anymore. You're not even walking. You're sitting down. It stops you in your tracks. But it allows you to get back to running much faster because your run energy replenishes much faster. So getting to the point where you don't need to rest anymore because you're teleporting around like a madman is still satisfying and feels like progression. But at least before you get to that point, you're not pulling your hair out. I just disagree with this idea of if we make the movement system more bearable, it removes that feeling of progression. I vastly prefer Old School RuneScape to RuneScape 3, but I agree with 3 of the things you talked about, especially about agility and walking. The first thing I do when I make a new account is to train agility until I have full graceful. I continue to hope that the Old School RuneScape team will do something to make the agility skill better, so Walkscape will finally die. I don't understand how Ironmen handle walking around without access to stamina potions. You got yourself a new subscriber. Hopefully your love of RuneScape 3 will rub off on me because I've been unsuccessfully trying to get into RuneScape 3 for years. I appreciate comments like this because sometimes I feel like I'm the only person in the world who doesn't like the movement system in Old School RuneScape. It's nice to know I'm not just crazy. Also, yeah, I hope you find the fun in RuneScape 3 as well. It may never happen. There are a lot of people who just can't get into it, but I definitely think there is fun to have in RuneScape 3, and so I hope you find it. I genuinely do. It is a lot of fun, and it's fun to play, so I hope you find the fun in RuneScape 3. And thank you for subscribing. That's really nice. Managing run energy is a skill in itself. Preserving stamina and conserving stam pots is required in certain content. For getting from A to B, yeah, run energy sucks. There's countless teleports you can use though, and updating the run energy is just trivializing established metas. Well, I have bad news for you. They are updating the movement system. But I just don't agree. I don't think it would be such a big deal in the long run. If we change the movement system, it might make some people have to adjust their strategies for some things. But honestly, it would just make everything less tedious, in my opinion. So to me, it may be impressive how well higher level players can fight against the broken movement system, and it is impressive, but I think they shouldn't have to do that. In my mind, that's saying running away from this bloodthirsty monster is a skill that I've gotten pretty good at. And yeah, that's impressive, but you shouldn't have to run from a monster in the first place. There shouldn't be a monster. So just because you've developed this skill fighting against this bad thing and you're like, look, I'm really good at fighting against this bad thing. That has become a part of how I live my life. That doesn't mean that bad thing should exist. And if someone came around and said, hey, can I get rid of this bad thing for you? I don't think you should say, no, this is something I've gotten good at. Like, why would you take it away? There shouldn't be a monster. Take away the monster. And I've already said my piece on the teleport thing. I've already addressed that, so I won't repeat myself there. It's the same issue I have with classic WoW. The game doesn't respect your time. It was great when I was 12 and had nothing else to do really aside from school, but as an adult with a 40-hour job and an active social life, I'm not going to spend my limited gaming time on something that doesn't feel fun. So this is great. This isn't something I considered, but I think you're right. I don't have 12 hours a day to grind on RuneScape, so I need to get down to business much quicker these days than when I was a kid. Obviously, I didn't have 12 hours a day to play RuneScape as a kid either, but this point is still valid. This is absolutely what frustrates me about this movement system. It feels like it's wasting my time. When I mentioned tedious game mechanics artificially stretching the time it takes to do something, this goes hand in hand with that. When I feel like you're wasting my time, which is much more precious these days than it used to be, I start to get very frustrated with your game. It's honestly a similar feeling, not the same, it's not the same, but it's a similar feeling to when mobile games games artificially make you wait until tomorrow to keep playing, unless you pay, of course. It's not literally the same, obviously. It's not predatory in Old School RuneScape like it is in those mobile games, but it does give me a similar feeling of my time deliberately being wasted. The walking is being updated. Yes, I had no idea about this. I got so many comments that were like, they are changing it. And that's great. That's great news. And, you know, honestly kind of confirms my gripes a bit. In a game like Old School RuneScape that requires players to agree with major changes, that fact that this change is coming means I'm definitely not the only one who feels that way about the walking mechanic. I don't get why this video has so many hate comments. You made some valid points about why RuneScape 3 might be more enjoyable for some people. I completely agree, especially with the user-friendly interface. Great video. Thank you. Like I said, it's nice to know that I'm not the only one in the world who feels this way, so thank you very much. I like to sprinkle these comments in because it did kind of feel like everyone in the world disagreed with me, and then I would read one comment that was like, hey, I like what you said, and I'm like, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Can't AFK enough. Sorry. When I play a video game, I want to play a video game and be invested. So here's where I'll admit I made a mistake. I should have titled the AFK section, "Not a lot of genuine AFK methods," or something like that, instead of saying there were none at all, as I do know about star mining and other genuine AFK methods that do fit my criteria. However, a few people seem to share this sentiment or imply that I wanted to be lazy and Old School RuneScape is just not that kind of game. First, if you don't care about AFK training or straight up don't like it, that's okay. Old School RuneScape definitely has plenty of active training methods. Most of them, in fact. Second, Old School RuneScape itself promotes AFK training. There are tons of videos and tutorials online showing people how to AFK train almost every skill, if not every skill. My argument is, if it's going to be in the game at all, it should be good. And right now, there is that expectation that you can AFK some things. So if you can AFK some things, I want better AFK methods than what we have. Some of them I like, but a lot of them I don't. I know this is going to get a lot of angry comments, but you do make some valid points. I think if RuneScape 3 didn't have microtransactions, a lot more people would be playing it. The Old School RuneScape community is at times amazing and awful. A lot of polls fail because people don't want to train a new skill to max or want their grind they had to do be easier on a new player. So I do think this is part of it. Obviously, this isn't the reason everyone disagrees with me, but I do think this is an element of it for some people. There is a feeling of, it was hard for me, so it should be hard for you. Like I said, not everyone, but that sentiment is out there. So just because it was hard for you doesn't mean it should be hard for everyone else. In my opinion, a game should always be improving and getting better all the time. And that means some things might be easier or simpler for new players than they were for you. And to me, that's just fine-tuning a game. You have two options. Pay-to-win microtransactionscape or Old School RuneScape. Sorry your precious tool belt and coin pouch aren't in Old School RuneScape, but that's the way the game was meant to be played. There were many people who brought up microtransactions in the comments, and let me say right at the start that I agree, microtransactions are a major issue in RuneScape 3, but I wasn't talking about my issues with RuneScape 3, I was talking about my issues with Old School RuneScape. Also, nothing I mentioned in my video involves microtransactions at all. If we copied the movement system in RuneScape 3 and pasted it in Old School RuneScape, it would not require any microtransactions at all. I'm not advocating for, nor would I ever advocate, adding microtransactions to Old School RuneScape. Also, I don't like this argument of the way the game was meant to be played. What does that mean? Technically, the game was meant to be played in a browser with a fixed UI, not full screen, with no plugins, 2D sprites, and no running mechanic at all. That was the original version of the game, but they improved it and changed it over time. Why is this version the version that was the way the game was meant to be played? This argument doesn't make sense to me. Also, it's worth noting that Andrew Gower's new game, Brighter Shores, doesn't include a stamina system at all, and doesn't keep your currency in your inventory. Yes, Brighter Shores isn't RuneScape. Yes, it's in early access, and those things might change. But to me, this shows how modern-day Andrew Gower feels about those game mechanics. In fact, I'd be very curious to ask him what he thinks about these mechanics in Old School RuneScape. Really want to know, and he might disagree with me. He might be like, we didn't do them in Brighter Shores for A, B, and C, but I think they work perfectly in RuneScape. I don't know. He could disagree with me, but I just think it's interesting to note that those things are the way they are in his new game. He also has a tool belt in Brighter Shores, but that's neither here nor there. nice effort on the video, but honestly wildly inaccurate and unfair. I'd like to see you revisit the topic if you actually progress in Old School and learn the game. So I mentioned this in the beginning, and I am planning to learn more about the game, but I don't know how the video is inaccurate. Seriously, this is not me trying to be funny here. Please let me know in the comments of this video if there's anything inaccurate in my original video, because that would undermine my entire argument. And I did do lots of research on like game mechanics and things like that. I had several people say I should have researched the game more before I made this video, but I don't know what they're talking about. I know I have many opinions that are subjective and many people disagree with, but as far as I know, I never said anything that was objective fact about the game that wasn't true. Many people voiced the idea that I didn't know enough about the teleports and faster ways to cross the map, but I do know about those things, like I mentioned before, and I also mentioned them in the video, so I don't understand that argument. I understand if you don't agree with my opinion about how the players shouldn't have to compensate for bad game design, and you might not see it as compensating or as bad game design, and that's fine. But that doesn't mean I don't know about teleports. I just don't agree that teleports fix the poor movement system. So I just don't understand this argument that it was poorly researched. I don't know what research I have to do about my own opinions. I just don't like the movement system, and I don't know what researching more about the game would have told me. It's just my opinion about the movement system, and I don't know why that makes it inaccurate and unfair. But if it really is, if I'm missing something, then please tell me, because I don't want to be inaccurate or unfair. So I would love to hear that in the comments if there is something from my original video that was just objectively false. Yeah, you can't say any of my opinions were false. You just don't agree with them, which is fine. We can have different opinions, but I don't know how that would be inaccurate. I don't know. Please help me in the comments. Let me know. All right, there are definitely way more comments, but I think I covered the main arguments. I didn't cover every comment, but most of the comments that I saw, these were the main arguments. So if there's a major argument that you think I should have covered and I didn't, like if you think I missed something, let me know, because I really am not trying to cherry pick these arguments and skip out on things I don't have answers for. So genuinely, if there's something else I missed, please tell me, because I'd love to cover it sometime. I love Old School RuneScape. And I know my negativity in the original video made it seem like I don't, or that I don't like fans of Old School RuneScape, but that's not true. And that's why I don't love that it came across that way, because I love Old School RuneScape, and I love the community. Thank you so much for watching. I know this is a very different kind of video, and probably won't get as much traction as the previous one, but I wanted to put this out there. If you want to see more things like this, where we kind of have discussion about RuneScape, let me know, because that could be fun. If you'd like to see more of my content, please subscribe. I've got Race to 99 Episode 3 coming, as well as the RuneScape 3 Blind Bossing series, getting the Fire Cape for the first time in Old School RuneScape, and a lot more. If you liked this video, please leave it a like. If you didn't like this video, please leave a dislike. If you want to see where I'd rank all the Old School RuneScape skills on a tier list, check out this video.